Hello lovely people, I'm Catherine and welcome to the moon phase stitch along. So for this whole 28 days of moon cycles, from the full moon right through, every day I'm going to stitch a little moon onto a piece of cloth for my journal for all seasons. So I hope if you're inspired to follow along that it's something that speaks to you. I've thought for some time that my moods are affected by the moon. And many of you have said when I've talked about it here and there that you're the same. So I thought it would be interesting to have a little ritual each day or each evening. I'm going to stitch in the evening, and just kind of take note of how I feel that day alongside the phase of the moon. And I'll explain to you in a little bit how I'm going to represent the phases of the moon in my stitching. But so yeah, just a few words, just how I feel mentally, how I feel physically, how I feel emotionally, and just compare. And obviously it's not really scientific. You need to do more than 1 month and more than one person probably to do, a true scientific experiment. But it's just more an exercise in self-care, just to try and get into that habit of checking in with myself and just giving a little thought to how I feel, whilst also having the daily discipline of a little stitching. I stitch every day anyway, but there have been times in my life when I haven't, and doing these little daily projects for a set period of time and just having that tiny bit of discipline has always helped me get my creative mojo back. So maybe if you're one of those people that are currently struggling to find yours, this will help you with that as well. So the first thing I'm going to do is go into the kitchen and make a cup of tea, and I'll take you with me and I'll do my best one-handed just to show you how I'm going to colour the cloth. Now this idea of colouring the cloth with the tea came from Mary in the Facebook group, so thank you so much Mary. That was a few weeks ago, I think a couple of weeks ago, that she was doing it, not to stitch the moon or anything, but just as a little daily ritual. And I was thinking about the moon at the same time, and sort of the two things came together in my head, because it's one of my rituals is every morning when I wake up and make a cup of tea, I go and sit in the living room with my cup of tea, and I don't open any social media or put anything on the TV or radio or anything like that. I just sit quietly with my tea, with Stella and Fred if he's around, and just drink my tea and let my thoughts come. And yeah, that's something I've only been doing since I've been living alone. And I find that is, sometimes they're not nice thoughts, other times they are nice thoughts. Sometimes it's just a little planning meeting with myself of what I want to do that day, but I just let the thoughts come and just sit with them for the time it takes me to drink the tea. So I thought it would be lovely for me to combine that with the moon, stitching the moon project. You might have different ideas, you might have different rituals. If you don't drink tea, you could do this with your coffee grounds if you drink ground coffee. Or if you drink powdered coffee, you could just dampen your little square and sprinkle some powdered coffee over it. If you don't drink tea or coffee, you could just choose some beautiful cloths that speak to you and, just not do that part of it, just do the stitching. So I hope you can come up with a way to join in if it's something you like the sound of. So without further ado, I'm going to go make a cup of tea, and then we'll get on with how I'm going to do it. Okay? Okay, this will probably be really wobbly. So I've got my tea bag in my You Got This mug, which is normally white inside. Every now and then I give it a scrub, but that's just tannin. Doesn't bother me. So I'm going to make my cup of tea. Just boiled the kettle. There we go. If you don't use tea bags and you use one of these, just let it mash a bit, as we say in Yorkshire. Put my equally tannin dyed spoon on top of it. If you use these little things, with loose tea, you could try just when you've made your tea, just laying it on in a saucer like that. But I think I would be inclined to just get the leaves out onto the cloth. And there's a dried leaf from before, because I think once it's dried, and I wouldn't let it be too wet, because I think once it's dried, they'll dust off. If you were worried, I guess you could put a little piece of chiffon or, some very fine cloth over the top, cheesecloth or something like that, as a kind of makeshift tea bag. I just lay it on and put the tea bags over the top, the tea leaves. And equally, if you make tea in a pot, you could do the same thing, just scoop out you know, the leaves when you've finished your tea. So I'm going to, I know this is not remotely obligatory, it's just because I like this. I'm going to put a bit of rust. I've got this rusty washer thing, because I like the colours you get, and I'll show you at the desk in a minute because I've got an example, when the iron reacts with the tea. Now this is not sort of proper rust and tea dyeing, this is for the ritual of it. But if you are interested and you don't know about proper rust and tea dyeing, there's a very comprehensive 2-part series in my eco printing playlist, which I will link to in the description box below. So anyway, so I've got my cloth dry. I put my rusty washer on the top, and then get my tea bag out. I like my tea quite strong, Yorkshire blood, like builder's tea we call it here in the UK. Normally I would use my other hand just to stop the cup moving. I'm going to have to do my best. So there's my tea bag, so I'm just going to dollop that on the top, and it's a bit hot. Hot, hot, hot. When things are hot, I find it helps. Oh, sorry, you're not even in frame. I think it helps to say hot, 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 hot. I don't know why. You could let it cool a bit if you're less, if your fingers are less heat proof than mine. Mine are not too bad. I think I've numbed them by putting them into all kinds of cauldrons and things when I'm eco printing. And I just do that basically, and you see how it's seeping. So you don't need to worry, and you know, we're not looking for even results or anything like that. I could put a little weight on, I suppose, but I'm not going to bother. I didn't do it with the little one. I'll show you in a minute, the test one I did. So early morning when I get up, I make my cup of tea. I need some milk in it. I'll do that in a second. And I have all my little pre-cut squares or pre-torn squares standing by. Now this saucer is not it's an old saucer from a tea set of my auntie's, but I used them under plant pots and things like that, only because of the rust. It's glazed, so a really good wash when I finish using it and it would be fine. But just be careful with rust, you know. I mean, it's not mega toxic to most people, but some people are sensitive. It's iron after all, you know. But yeah, I'm just being very careful. I don't want to set anybody off with any kind of allergy reaction. So that's it. So first thing in the morning I shall do that each day. I shall let it sit there all day like that. And then in the evening I will take it out, give it a gentle rinse just under the tap. I'm not worried about archival for this. I'm never really worried about archival. Actually, I prefer that my work's biodegradable rather than archival. But if you want to read more about, hear more about neutralising and all that, it's in the videos that I mentioned earlier. But yeah, for this that will do pig. So once I've started my project, every evening I'll have one dry, coloured, ready to stitch onto. Yeah, so I'll do it with my morning cup of tea. And then in the evening I will have the one washed and dried from the previous day, because I want it to sit there for a day and then be rinsed and dry overnight. I hope that makes sense. So the first morning you'll put one in, but the evening you won't be stitching. So you need to do this on Wednesday, the day before the full moon, if you're following along. So you need to do this on Wednesday, and then you'll do your first stitching on Thursday. And I'm going to do my stitching in the evening. I don't feel I'm explaining this very well, but I hope it's clear. Okay, so I'll take you over to my desk with my cup of tea, and I'll show you how I'm going to proceed from there. Okay, I hope I was clear enough in my explanation. Maybe I'll just recap while I'm sitting here and not doing something else. So the morning before the full moon, which will be the morning of June the 10th, with my morning cup of tea, I'm going to dye a little square of cloth just like I showed you. I'm going to let it sit there all day, and then in the evening I'm going to rinse it and leave it to dry overnight. And then I'm going to do that every morning and every evening for the full 28-day cycle. But I need to do it the day before because I need that overnight drying time, so I hope that's now clear. And then every evening I will take my dry piece of cloth from the previous day, and that's the piece I'll be stitching onto. Yeah, I thought I'd messed up the explanation, so I hope that's clear now. So this was the little test square that I did, and you see the rust makes these lovely lavender grey tones, and it kind of looks to me, or it will when it's got a circle around, like a bit like the surface of the moon, you know, the the craters and the mountains and so on. But I just like that better than just the brown of the tea. That's just me, and it doesn't have to be a, you know, if you've got bits of rust but not a lovely big round piece like that, you could just put any piece of rust there. If you don't have rust, if you've got steel wool, you could put a small piece of steel wool, but then I would be very careful that none of the little fibres got into the cloth, because, you know, they're sharp and not nice. Or you could just do the tea, but that's just how I'm doing it. So this is my test square. So what I've prepared here in my little bowl that I made with you last Friday are 28 squares. Not those are backing squares. 28 squares, and mine are about 3 inches square. And some are linen, some are old sheet. They're all, you know, just various little bits and bobs that I've had lying around. But I've got them all prepared ready, because I think I'm kind of setting myself up to win, really, because I've got everything there. I shall put them in the kitchen next to my tea canister, and so in the morning when I've made my tea, it's just one extra step that I take one of my squares, I lay it on my saucer, I put my rusty washer and put my used tea bag on the top. So that will become part of the morning ritual that I already have. So all my 28 all ready to go. And then I've also got, I haven't done all of them yet, I need to go and make some more. Slightly bigger. This is just because I prefer to stitch through 2 layers. This is some old curtain, I think it's actually polycotton, in fact I'm sure it is, that was hanging here in my home when I bought it. But if you don't have, you know, an old polycotton curtain, it doesn't have, I mean, cotton would be better, I'm just using it because I had it, it's better to use it than throw it away. But I'm just going to use that as a backing, just to give it a bit more substance for stitching through. You can just use a bit of thin old sheet or cotton muslin, or, you know, something of that kind. So that each of them will be backed, and I think those are about 1 inch bigger, just because I like the look of it, but you know, you can do you, of course. Now in terms of what I'm going to do with them, I'll do the stitching at the end. I'll show you how I'm going to do the stitching. I'm going to just move my tea. See how strong I have it. I'm going to put them in my journal. Now you could do any number of things with them. You could make a stitch meditation scroll. I did think of doing that, you know, just join them all together, or just stitch them, this piece, onto a long strip and have a big wooden stick or something to wrap it around when you're done. That would be really cool, because then you'd have like a timeline. You could make a wall hanging, so we'll have 28, so you could do 4 weeks, like 4 by 7, and have it as a wall hanging. Or the other thing I thought would be cool would be you could make a rice bag, because you'll have 28. You could do 3 9 patches with them, which would make 27, and then for your 4th side you could either do one big one or keep it the same size and just applique it onto a bigger square of cloth for the 4th size of your rice bag. If you're new here and you don't know about rice bags, there's also a video for that in my tutorials playlist, which I'll also try and remember to link now I've mentioned it. So yeah, you can, you know, you don't have to put them in your journal, but I've got this journal for all seasons that I'm keeping through the year, so I really want to include them into this. So I'll show you my pages. I've got, that's last week. Those, I'll talk about those in a minute. I've got some unusual shape pages coming up next, but I've got kind of a page per week, so I'm just going to put mine on as I've made them, however they fit on my pages. Like I might put 6 on here and then 1 there, or I might put 2 here and 5, whatever. And then the next week I'll put the next, you know, whatever. But I think they would look nicer against a black background, and I could move ahead to black paper, but I'm trying to stay, you know, consecutive. So, but I do have black gesso. Black paint would equally work, but I like black gesso because it's matte. I use black gesso on that side there. So I'm going to black gesso my next 4 weeks. I'll get that done in advance. So 1, 2, 3, and there I only have to do that side and that little bit of tape, and that's already black. And then I'll show you in next Monday's journaling video, and I might show you actually the first one in this Friday's video, which is a slow stitch video. But I plan on, once I've stitched them and it's all black gessoed, let's show you on here. putting them on either with just a little bead of glue, or I do have some double-sided tape, I might use that actually. Just putting them on to the page and then flipping it up and then writing underneath, and I've got a white gel pen, writing underneath my few words, you know, today I felt contented, I had a pain in my knee, whatever, you know, I'm just making that up. Whatever little words I want to put, but not I don't want to do huge journaling, just whatever fits under that little square, basically, just a few words. So that's my idea. So I can put that away. You can, of course, if you want to, just keep them in a little stack till the end of the 28 days and then decide what you want to do with them. If anything, you could just do them as for the process, you know, things don't have to, if you've been here a while, you'll have heard me say this before, the process is important. I don't like to waste things, of course, but the process, the joy we get from doing things, it doesn't always have to be some productive thing that you make. That's my thoughts on the matter. Okay, so the moon phases, Google the 28 moon phases, you'll find some kind of diagram like this if you want to be accurate. So I've written the date underneath each one, and I'm going to start with the full moon, and then it will be waning gibbous, and then you will get to the third quarter. So I'm kind of going backwards really. You could have started with the new moon and, you know, gone, but I didn't want to wait another 2 weeks. Number one important to note is this is northern hemisphere. Now in the southern hemisphere you'll see the same, but for example on the 15th of June your bit that shows, this white bit, will be reversed, if that makes sense. So because you see the same portion of the moon is lit up, but you see it's reversed because of the way the planets, you know, all that. But if you Google Northern Hemisphere or Southern Hemisphere 28 moon phases, you'll get a lot of these images coming up to work from. Now in order to, I'm going to make templates. In order to get the templates, you can either just draw them freehand, which is kind of what I did, or you can go and do some mathematical clever thing, and I don't know how to do that, and I'm not really bothered for the purposes of this. But the thing to note is, in fact, you don't need 28 templates, you only need 8. Because if you see here, when the moon just starts to wane, a little sliver has gone, and I've numbered that template number 2. So then when you go and look for when it starts to wax again after the new moon, this is the direct reverse of that. So you can use the same template, only you'll leave the little crescent showing rather than stitching the big area. When you see how I'm going to stitch, that might become clearer. So don't think, oh gosh, I've got to make 28 templates. No, you only have to make 8, and one of them is a full circle, which you'll use every day if you do it like me. I hope that's okay. So I've numbered them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then it goes 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, because then it will be full moon, but that starts the next cycle. So I hope that is clear. I'll leave that there for a minute in case you want to, you know, zoom in on it or screenshot it or do something like that with it. Okay, so I've drawn them bigger. I've drawn some bigger circles, rather wonkily. I drew around an egg cup. And I've drawn 8 of them, and I've just free-handed the little missing bits as the moon wanes. And I've put the number on so that when they're cut out I'll remember which is which. So on my little sample that I made, I've also decided to stitch in red. So I'm going to stitch the outline in red, and then I'm going to stitch the part that's visible in white seed stitches. That's how I think I'll interpret it. And when it's the new moon, I will, so we don't see anything, I will stitch the outline circle, but I'll stitch it in black, and I won't do any seed stitching in the middle. That's how I'll represent the new moon. But you know, you might have other ideas. The reason I've chosen red is because the moon in June is called, in Europe and certainly in the UK, that's what I've heard it referred to as the rose moon. And June is my birthday month, and June is the month of roses. And my granddad, because for a long time I was the only female grandchild among 3 boys, grandsons. My granddad always called me his little rose amongst the thorns of the boys. So that's why I've chosen red. Also, red is obviously associated with women's cycles in particular, so it just seemed symbolic on so many levels. I believe in the US you call it the strawberry moon, but strawberries are also red, so hey. So that's why I've chosen to stitch red. So I'm going to cut it. I'm going to cut all these out in front of you. I've got the blunty scissors, not the fabric scissors. Okay, so I've cut out my full circle and I've cut out the half circle just to show you. So imagine today is going to be the 3rd quarter, so I'll need the half circle that's on the left of the moon as I look at it to be visible. So how I'm going to do that is I'm going to first of all pin on my full circle. Now you could do the invisible baste or something if you wanted to first, but I think it's so tiny I'm just going to go for it. I've got it somewhat central, but you know, I'm just going to, sorry for my rings on the desk. I could get my felt mat, but Fred's asleep on it and he gets cross if I disturb him. Little monkey. So I'll try not to clang my rings. And then just holding it like that, I'm going to get my, I've got 3 strands because it's silk thread, but normally I would use 2 strands of embroidery thread. And then I'm just going to come up from the back and simply stitch a little circle. And I've started deliberately somewhere in the middle. So I'm just going to stitch the entire circle. I did think about only stitching the bit that's showing, but I think when you get down to tiny little crescents and things, it might just be a bit, I don't know. You know, obviously you will maybe have your own ideas, but I'm going to stitch the full circle every time. The only change will be when it's the new moon, I'll stitch it in black instead of red, I think. It might change, but I think so. So I'm just holding the template down against the cloth where I'm stitching and not worried if it comes up elsewhere. You could of course draw around your templates onto the cloth, but I just like to do it this way. Okay, I'm coming back round to the beginning, and I always like to just judge how many stitches and spaces I can fit, and if there's going to be a small gap or a big gap, I just adjust my stitch length a little bit. It's just me. Of course, if you didn't want to prepare all your your chart of 28 and all that like I did in advance, you can just look it up each day, or if you've got a moon phases calendar already, or you know, you don't have to do it. I'm just sharing my way. Feel free to modify, of course. So I'll leave my thread attached, I'll take that template off, and I'm going to keep all those templates safely in this little basket, which will be the project basket for the month. So everything's together. And then I'll take my half template and put that just inside my stitch circle. And I don't think I really even need to pin. So when you cut out these other ones, obviously keep the big bits. You see what I mean? Don't try and keep that little slither. Keep the larger areas. Because when you come to fill in the thin crescent, you just stitch this line that I'm about to stitch in exactly the same way there, but you do your seed stitches in the thin bit. And when it's gibbous, when you've got the larger part, you do seed stitches here. I hope I'm making that clear. Sometimes I feel like I over-explain and it makes it less clear, but anyway, I do my best. So I'm just going to now come up and stitch that halfway line. That's why I started halfway. I'm just planning ahead a little bit as to where I wanted my thread to end up. And I haven't even put a pin in it. I could have done, I suppose. Maybe I should. Actually, this thicker paper is not a good choice. I will go back to my usual old envelopes and things because it's not pliable enough. It just was a pile on the top of my scraps of paper here. But yeah, use thinner paper for these templates. Just copy paper or old envelopes is what I usually use. You see, it's really difficult to manipulate because it doesn't bend. So I'm glad I found that out so that you didn't have to. So I'm just going to stitch along that line. Could probably have done it by eye without a template, but you maybe won't be able to with the different crescent-y shapes. And that's one more stitch, and then I'll finish it off on the back. Sorry again. Come here for clanging. There we go. So now I've got my quarter. It's called the quarter, although it's halves. It's not exactly in the middle, but you know, I don't mind. This is just the process. It's just the ritual of doing it. And then I take my white, that I've just got 2 strands of white floss, and then I'm just going to do seed stitches. Now if you don't like seed stitching, I know some people don't, you could do just up and down running stitch, and maybe running stitch back the other way, like a sort of, maybe I'll do that. No, I want to do seed stitch. I like doing seed stitch. So now there's 2 ways you can do it. You either go in and then come out straight away where you think your next seed stitch will start, and then you want them all random. That's the hardest thing, to get them all going in different directions, and like so. Or what I tend to do is stab stitch, so I just go through to the back. I find it easier to place them, and it's just, you know, that's just what I prefer to do. But if you haven't done it before, then try both and see what you like. You could do French knots if you preferred, you know, any kind of all over stitching that you fancied. But I just like the look of seed stitch. And it will take me a little while, especially when I've got the full moon to do. But I just think it will maybe take me, I don't know, 20 minutes, half an hour for the most time commitment ones to do the stitching. And that's fine, I think I can find that time. I probably will do it just before I go to bed. And the other thing I'm going to do as well, when weather permitting, when it's clear, is go out and look at the moon each night. Just to kind of connect, you know, connect myself with the moon and acknowledge her presence. When I say her, because the moon is associated with the feminine. And there we go, that's my stitching. Actually, I didn't really enjoy as much as I could have stitching through this. I think because my old cloths are quite thin, this isn't really substantial enough. So I'm going to not use this for my backing. I'm going to go and find some old sheet. So it is worth, I think, particularly for something like this, which is all about self-care, auditioning your materials first. So maybe take a piece of what you propose to use for your backing and a piece of one of your front cloths, and then take an empty needle and just have a look and just check that you like the feel of it in your hands, that you like the way the needle goes through it and all that kind of thing before you commit to using it, and then tear it up into your squares. So there we go. So I hope I was clear. If I wasn't clear, please do ask me in the comments below, and I will make sure to answer any questions asked before we need to start on Wednesday in preparation for Thursday. I'll make sure to answer your questions there. So that would be, just to be clear, this is the half moon. I only chose that one because I thought it was the easiest way to show you the principle, known as the third quarter or the first quarter, which is on the 18th of June. And the full moon is on Thursday, Thursday the 11th of June. My time here in the UK, it's something like 5 AM, so it is the early hours of Thursday morning, but I'm not being, you know, that precise. I'm going to start my stitching on the Thursday, but I'll dye my first piece of cloth on Wednesday the 10th of June in the morning. I hope I've said that enough times to get it straight in my own mind. So yeah, I really look forward to hearing your interpretations, or if you join along with me for the 28 days. All the Monday videos this month will be dedicated to this project, so I'll share my progress and any other thoughts I've had along the way. So I hope you'll join me for that if you don't usually follow Mondays. And meanwhile, thank you so much for watching. I'm going to go and drink my cup of tea, which is a bit cold now. I'm going to have a little sip. It's okay. I'm going to go and finish my slightly cold cup of tea, and thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to you joining me next time for more cloth tales. Lots of love. Bye bye. Bye bye. Kisses. Bye bye.